Thank you very much, Stefan. That really set the scene for where renewable energy is developing. In shipping, I'm going to be focused, of course, from an IWSA point of view, on the wind component in direct shipping, but I'll also give a few overview pieces. We will be talking about the alternative fuels and the development there with our colleague from Bureau Veritas in time. But just to introduce the International Windship Association, we are a not-for-profit organisation which was formed back in 2014. We have over 130 members worldwide from about 30 different countries now. And our main goal is the facilitation and promotion of wind propulsion or direct wind energy use in the commercial shipping field. And I'll talk about the size of the current fleet of wind-assisted vessels, etc., in a short while. So first of all, and very importantly, we have what is the shipping challenge? Now, I understand that we have a mix of audience here, some from shipping, some are not. But this was actually mentioned in a presentation that I just watched, actually, about DNVGL, which is the 1.5 degree target. Now, on my optimistic days, when I get out of the optimistic side of the bed, I think we can still achieve this. When I get out of the more pessimistic side of the bed, I'm not sure if we still have the opportunity to reach this. Anyhow, basically, if we are aiming at this target, all ships designed and built today will be operating in a net zero emissions world, primarily because the asset life is 20 to 30 years and quite often beyond that. So all of the ships that we're building today will be operating in that 20 period. And I think we're still very far away from producing vessels that have zero emissions. And any piece of or any ton of CO2 that is emitted after that period is going to be charged at quite a high rate. We have quite a clear initial IMO strategy on greenhouse gas emissions, and this was a very bold move back in 2018. As most of you know, shipping is not included in the Paris Agreement. In many senses, this was our Paris Agreement. And the agreement there is for at least 50% reduction across the fleet by 2050. Compared to 2008. Now, is that bold enough? Well, we like to focus on the at least part. We think zero emissions by 2050 is possible, but it's a big ask. And 2008 was a pretty high year for emissions, so the goal is still manageable. Shipping is the most efficient form of moving people and goods around the world, but still the emissions equal around about a country of the size of Germany or Japan, and that's likely to rise by about 50% 2050. So it's still a significant amount here. A couple of other issues that have come up. Maersk, actually, the biggest ship operator, I think we can still say that, in the world, has gone for a fleet carbon neutrality by 2050, so they're stepping in front of the IMO initial strategy. And things have got a little bit more complicated because there's an upcoming vote in the EU for shipping included in the European trading scheme, which will add costs to fuel, etc. Now, coming to the wind propulsion in particular, direct wind propulsion. What is it? It's a primary renewable, so meaning that it can be delivered to the point of use without any conversion, without any infrastructure required, and used directly on the vessel, basically for free for the lifetime of that vessel. And we're looking at retrofit systems that can give between 5 and 20% savings, potentially up to 30% as those become optimized. Now, with new build vessels, we already have a few new build vessels, or sorry, have a number of vessels that are primary wind, small sail cargo vessels. With new build, primary wind, then we're looking at substantially higher. We're talking 50%, up to 80% or beyond that. on selected routes, not everywhere, but a high contribution. And one other thing I'm going to, or a couple of other things I'll say on this slide, is we're talking about a technology that is available today. There are systems already installed, and I'll talk about those in a moment, and a very robust pipeline of technologies coming through. We're looking at the next 12 to 18 months, seeing a substantial increase in the number of technologies available. The last thing I want to say on this is that we also see wind as a facilitator for secondary renewables. We're talking about the renewable energy to fuel dynamic, and I'll talk about that again in a moment. But there's also the potential for onboard fuel production. And this is something maybe in the 2030s or 40s that we could be actually seeing ships using excess wind to generate their own fuel. This is a graphic that's a bit of a takeaway. I won't go through this too much, but it just highlights what we're talking about when we're talking about the direct way of delivering wind energy. A big amount of focus is going on the top form, which is wind energy through to the alternative fuels, and absolutely vital area that land-based and ship-based, of course. But we need to change our perspective as well if we're going to take wind propulsion, not just as a ship efficiency or an energy efficiency measure, but actually as a propulsion force. And this is a difference in approach, a difference in percent. Now, I like to call the approach that we're looking at the hybrid wave. We're seeing wind as a facilitator for the introduction of ecofuels, but also as a way to substantially decarbonize the fleet itself. So I'm averaging out, as you'll see at the bottom, the wind component is averaged out around 20 to 30% by 2050. That includes retrofits and increasingly new builds coming into the market, plus activity, which is operational optimization, the way that we use ships, weather routing, speed reduction, crew training, blockchain. All of these things can significantly reduce the amount of fuel used. So we included 20% there. Vessel optimization, design, changing, using energy management systems more efficiently, air lubrication, putting on energy efficiency measures, another potential 20% there. And then we come to the ecofuels, and at the moment we see a lot of discussion within the shipping field, and it really is accelerating, of almost 100% fuel-based transition. Now that's a big ask. We are talking a billion tons of fuel being used per year. That is a huge ask here. So what we're saying is, let's reduce it. If we bring that down to 40%, that could actually be implemented a lot quicker with existing or pipeline technologies that are coming through in the next few years. It's a manageable. So moving on very quickly, the market forecasts and current status. Presently, we have, by the end of this year, we'll have 12 to 14 ocean-going vessels with wind assist systems installed. And that goes from everything from small ro-ro vessels, roll-on, roll-off vessels, right up to, I think, almost the largest vessels in the world, which are VLCC, massive oil tankers. There's a 300,000 deadweight ton VLCC operating out of China with 2 wind assist systems on board and another one on order. Plus, we have 20 plus small cargo, sail cargo vessels and cruise vessels in operation. And those cruise vessels often sometimes use the wind, but sometimes it's a nice backdrop for it. By the end of 2022, we will probably have seen that double in 2021 and then double again in 2022, by the end of 2022, with up to 47 vessels, large vessels, and that's just the pipeline that we have knowledge of at the moment. That excludes any commercial. Now, looking at the potential. I like to use other people's estimates for the market potential, but the EU put out a report in 2017, up to 10,700 installed systems by 2030. Of course, if your price speed is maybe restricted, or looking at speed reductions, and the discount rate is favorable. But we're looking, if it was 10,000 installed systems, that's pretty much around about 20% of the world fleet. But as you'll see, tankers and bulkers, it would be significantly higher. One of the reasons for that is that they have a lot of deck space, and their speeds are relatively slower than, say, for example, container ships. The UK government also estimated that the market for wind propulsion would be up to £2 billion per year in the 2050s. In comparison, alternative fuels would be between 8 and 10 billion. So probably looking at around about 20% of wind propulsion. Now, just I have two more slides here. One is some recent news. And again, this is a little bit of a takeaway for you. I can't go through all of this information. Hopefully this slide will give you an impression of just what we're starting to see coming through, and some very big players involved. Wallenius Marine has just, they're just putting out a lot of information about a new car carrier design, which should be in the water around 2023, 2024. Neoline on the right side is a new build as well, with significant fuel reductions. That's likely to be 2021, 2022. But we've got the retrofit market as well. And for example, in the center is Scandlines, which is a rotor system. This is now, I think, the 7th installation of rotor sails. And we should have 9 by the end of the year, with 16 to 18 rotors actually in operation. This is already breaking into the market quite substantially. And those 3 points of reference that the industry wants, the validation of those detail of the savings is starting to come through. And they're looking between the 5 to 10% mark at present. The next system that we're looking at, they're talking about a hinged version, and that's possibly up to 20%. We also have EconoWind and AirSeas, for example, which are both retrofit systems. One is the Ventafor system, which was developed by Jacques Cousteau. So for the older members of the audience, you probably remember back in the 80s. And that actually creates a suction in the air around the wing to increase the amount of lift. And the kites, this is an interesting off-the-deck system that is developing. And actually this system, AirSeas, is a spin-off of Airbus, the aviation manufacturer. So some very, very interesting systems that are going through. In the bottom left-hand corner is the VLCC that I was talking about. And my final main slide is, there are a number of projects underway that we're seeing some significant progress in. The WASP project is an EU Interreg project that we're involved with as well. And that's producing 5 wind assist installations, all retrofit. And it's a 3-year project that oversees that, monitors it, and verifies those savings. So giving more details to the market. The WISP project is one that's run by ABS and Marin. And this is looking at more the regulatory side of things. And also IWSA is developing some regional hubs. We have quite a significant one in Malta. So on my final slide, all of these companies are actually engaging in some way with wind propulsion at present. And actually, it's already out of date, because yesterday there was a release saying Total, French energy giant, is considering wind propulsion for their fleet of LNG carriers. So I've got to update this. It's never ending. But there are some very big players. Some of these are putting wind propulsion onto vessels already, or engaged with research projects around this. But of course, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, either now or by email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gavin. This was an excellent introduction overview And of course, I mean, for me, it makes perfect sense that keeping in mind the economic, also ecological principle of having energy chains as short as possible, as long as it allows. First, use what you have, and in the case of a vessel, use the wind that you have, and then see how you can cover the rest. So it's interesting already to hear that obviously some hybrid form of propulsion will be used in that sector. So I think this is really fantastic. Now we can now switch to the aviation sector. And as I think you have also, all of you have mentioned, my fellow speakers, aviation and shipping, the two big challenges for becoming climate neutral.